What kind of broken man rides into a town with nothing left but a lame horse, a worn saddle, and ghosts too heavy to speak of? That was the question hanging in the cold Wyoming wind the moment Eli Wade stepped into Black Hollow. The wind in the 1870s did not just blow, it scoured. It scraped the land bare and filled the air with iron, ice, and bitter dust. Eli rode through that wind on a horse that favored its front leg, both of them worn down to the bone. His coat was thin, his face carved with lines of sun and sorrow, and his eyes held the dull gray of a sky that promised no warmth. Winter was coming fast, and he needed shelter before the cold finished what life had started. Black Hollow was not kind to strangers. Men watched him from the general store porch with the hard eyes of people who had seen too much and trusted too little. He rode past them without a word, guiding his tired horse toward the livery. But before he reached it, he heard the noise. Not gunfire, not trouble, but laughter. Loud, mocking, sharp enough to cut. He followed the sound toward the edge of the settlement, where a long timber fence circled a wide, breaking corral. A crowd stood around it. Ranch hands, townsfolk, even a few drifters, passing a bottle, shouting, jeering. Inside the corral, a young cowboy pushed himself up from the dirt, coughing dust from his lungs. His vest was fancy. His pride was broken. And in the center of the corral stood the reason why. A stallion. Black as midnight, muscled like a storm cloud, eyes rolling white with pure rage. Its hooves struck the ground like war drums. Every breath the animal took shook the fence rails. "That's 25, a man crowed. 25 men tried. 25 men failed. "No man can ride that devil," another yelled. "Maybe no man can." The new voice cut through the laughter like a whip. Eli turned toward the porch of the big ranch house. There she stood. Maeve Carson, the widow of the Carson Ranch, tall, strong, dressed in a gray working skirt and a canvas coat. Her dark hair twisted into a tight, unforgiving bun. Her face had the hard beauty of stone cliffs, shaped by weather, loss, and a will carved from iron. She stared at the crowd with cold contempt before her eyes locked onto him, the stranger, the drifter, Eli Wade. "You," she called, her voice clear as a rifle shot. "You look like you've seen a horse before. Or are you just another man begging for kindness?" The crowd laughed. Eli just met her gaze, saying nothing. "If you are a real cowboy," Maeve Carson said, her voice carrying over the corral, "prove it. Ride my stallion. Stay on him for the count of 10, and I'll give you winter wages and a warm bunk." All eyes turned to Eli. He looked at the horse, the trembling hide. The panic masked his fury, the scars on its flank. It was not a demon, it was a creature broken by a hard hand. He finally shook his head. "No, ma'am. I reckon not." The crowd exploded in laughter. Men slapped their knees. Someone howled with delight. Maeve Carson's smile was thin and sharp. Eli didn't defend himself. He didn't waste a word. He just turned his horse and left the sound of their mockery behind him. At the livery, he spent his last coins on a stall for his horse and a patch of hay to sleep on. The livery keeper, Silas, eyed him with pity. "You lookin' for work?" "Yes, sir." "Carson Ranch is the biggest. But you saw the horse. That's her test. Been like that since her husband passed." Eli didn't ask questions. He tended his horse, rubbing its swollen leg, whispering soft comforts. He told himself he didn't care. About the job. About the ranch. About the widow. But as the sun dipped below the hills, he found himself walking back toward the Carson Ranch, drawn by something he didn't want to name. The corral was empty now. No crowd. No laughter. Just the stallion pacing alone, breathing hard, eyes wide with fear that had nowhere left to go. Eli rested his arms on the top rail and waited. He didn't move, didn't speak, just let the horse feel his presence. After a while, he climbed inside the corral, not walking toward the stallion, but kneeling in the dirt several feet away. He spoke softly, his voice low and steady, the same voice he had used to calm spooked cattle during artillery fire back east. "You ain't angry," he said. "You're scared. I know that feeling." The stallion slowed, watched him. Its ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Eli raised his hand slowly, palm up. "I'm not the one who hurt you." The stallion stepped forward, inch by inch, until its breath warmed Eli's fingers. It nudged his hand once, a brief, fragile touch. Eli stayed until the moon rose high. When he finally left the corral, the stallion watched him go. At the livery, Eli climbed into the hayloft and pulled a worn brass locket from beneath his shirt. Inside was the faded face of Sarah, his wife, lost to fire and smoke he could never forget. He whispered her name into the dark. He didn't sleep. The next morning, work was scarce. Men turned him away, shaking their heads. Word had already spread. He had refused Maeve Carson's challenge. By afternoon, he sat in the rusty Spur saloon nursing a cup of weak coffee, listening to whispers about the widow. She ain't been the same since Lewis died. Heard she saw him wrecked to pieces by that stallion. Some say he weren't a good man. Some say she ain't either. Eli didn't join the talk. He didn't judge. He knew too well what pain could twist a person into. When a drunk miner grabbed one of the saloon girls, Eli stepped in. Quiet. Steady. One hand on the miner's shoulder. A single, precise strike to the ribs. The man collapsed with a gasp. Eli paid for his coffee and walked out. He was packing his saddle to leave Black Hollow when a shadow appeared in the doorway. Maeve Carson. She stared down at him from her horse, her eyes unreadable. "You're leaving." "Yes, ma'am. No work here." "You stopped, Clem," she said. "Most men don't." He was hurting her. Her jaw tightened. "You'll ride a man," she said coldly, "but not a horse?" "The man chose the fight," Eli said. "The horse didn't." Something changed in her expression, so quick he almost missed it. She reined her horse around. "The offer still stands," she said. "Ride him. Earn your keep." Eli looked at her, then at the stallion, who stood watching from the corral. "All right," he said quietly. Maeve's eyes flickered. The ranch hands gathered, silent and expectant. No one knew what they were about to witness. But it would change everything. Eli Wade stepped into the corral with the same quiet calm he carried into every hard moment of his life. The ranch hands leaned on the fence, waiting for the fight. Maeve Carson stood a few steps back, arms crossed tight, her face set like stone. She had seen 25 men fail. She expected the same today. Hellfire pawed the dirt, muscles coiled, breath heavy. The stallion remembered this place. He remembered fear. He remembered pain. But he also remembered the man who knelt in the dirt the night before, speaking softly, not asking anything of him. Eli didn't rush. He didn't shout. He moved slow, steady, letting the horse see him. He placed his hand on Hellfire's neck. The stallion trembled, but didn't pull away. "I'm here," Eli said softly. "Just me." In one smooth motion, Eli swung onto the horse's bare back. For a second, everything froze. Then, Hellfire exploded. The stallion reared so high the ranch hands stepped back in fear. He twisted, kicked, bucked, with every ounce of rage inside him. Dust shot into the air. Hooves slammed like hammer blows. Men shouted. Someone yelled, "He's done! He's a dead man!" But Eli didn't fight the horse. He moved with him. Every buck, every twist, Eli flowed like water. He didn't grab the mane. He didn't force control. He let the horse burn the panic out. His voice stayed low, steady, calm. "It's all right. Let it out." Hellfire bolted, running the circle of the corral so fast the wind screamed. But Eli leaned close, not afraid, guiding with the smallest touch. And then, when the stallion chose direction instead of chaos, Eli guided him through the open gate. The ranch hands shouted in panic, "He's loose! He's going to kill him!" But Eli wasn't losing control. He was giving the horse something it hadn't had in years. Freedom! They thundered past the barn, past the bunkhouse, through the open yard. Hellfire ran like a storm, black mane flying, hooves tearing the earth, and Eli stayed steady, guiding him in a wide loop back toward the corral. When they returned, Hellfire slowed, first to a canter, then a trot, then a gentle, trembling stop. The horse stood heaving, drenched in sweat, shaking, but calm. Calm. Eli swung down. His legs wobbled from the force of the ride, but he didn't fall. He placed a hand on Hellfire's neck. The stallion lowered its head into Eli's shoulder. The ranch hands went silent. Every man standing there knew they'd just seen something impossible. Eli Wade had ridden the devil. But Maeve Carson didn't cheer. She stared at Eli, her face pale, her eyes storm gray. Something deep inside her shook loose, something she'd locked away for years. She turned sharply, her voice stiff. "The east bunkhouse is empty. Be at breakfast at 5. Then she walked away before anyone could see her expression. Eli watched her go. He didn't know yet that riding the horse had cracked open the hardest part of her heart. Days passed, and Eli slipped into the rhythm of the ranch. First up, last in. He repaired miles of broken fence. He checked cattle. He worked quietly, never asking questions, never pushing where he wasn't welcome. He fixed the south trough, dug new post holes, and spent long hours grooming Hellfire, earning the stallion's trust a little more each day. The ranch hands began to respect him. Not because he talked. He barely said 10 words in a day, but because he worked harder than any man they'd ever seen. The only part of the ranch untouched by his calm was the main house. Maeve Carson ran it like a fortress. Curtains drawn, doors locked, no laughter, no warmth. She gave orders sharp enough to cut. She rode the property every morning with the rigid pride of someone holding the world together by force. But something inside her had shifted since Eli's ride. She avoided him. She avoided looking at him. She avoided anything that reminded her of the moment she saw the stallion quiet under his hand. Because that moment felt dangerous. One night, long after the bunkhouse had gone quiet, Eli sat awake staring into the dark. A cold wind rattled the window. Then he heard it, a sound from the main house. Not footsteps, not trouble, a soft, broken sound. Maeve Carson was crying. Eli got up. He walked outside, silent, following the lamplight glowing in the kitchen window. He kept to the shadows. He wasn't spying. He couldn't help but look. She sat at the table, hair loose around her shoulders, face buried in her arms. A whiskey bottle half empty beside her, her shoulders shaking, her breath hitching with every quiet sob. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was grief. Crushing, lonely, private grief. Eli's heart tightened. He knew that sound. He had heard it in tents after battles, in burned barns after loss. He stepped back into the darkness before she could see him. He wouldn't take away the one thing she had left, her pride, but he never forgot that sound. The next morning she appeared at the corral, face normal, hair pulled tight, voice steady. But when their eyes met, Eli saw it. A shadow behind her gaze. A rim of red she had tried to hide. He pretended not to notice. "Morning, ma'am," he said simply. That was all. And she looked away quickly, grateful. As the days grew colder, the sky changed color. The wind sharpened. The cattle grew restless. A storm was coming. Thunder rolled over the plains one night as the ranch hands gathered in the bunkhouse. Rain hammered the roof. Lightning ripped the dark sky. Eli sat on his bunk, listening. Then, a crack of thunder so violent it shook the earth, followed by a scream. Not human, a hoarse, a desperate, terrified scream. Eli was out the door before anyone else moved. He didn't stop for his boots. He ran barefoot across the freezing mud toward the corral. Lightning had struck the rail. The fence was on fire, and inside, Hellfire was losing his mind. The stallion reared, eyes wild, hooves lashing. Flames hissed in the rain. Ranch hands shouted for buckets. One yelled, "He'll break his neck!" On the porch, Maeve stood frozen in her nightgown, the storm lighting her face with terror. The scene was too familiar. Too close to the night her husband had died. Eli climbed the gate. "Wade, stay back!" Bates yelled. "He'll kill you!" But Eli didn't stop. He stepped into the burning pen, barefoot, shirt soaked through, mud splashing his legs. Hellfire struck out with a front hoof, catching Eli's shoulder and knocking him to his knees. Maeve gasped, covering her mouth. Eli pushed himself up. He walked straight toward the terrified stallion, placing his body between the fire and the horse. "I'm here," he said, voice steady in the chaos. "I know the fire. You ain't alone." Hellfire screamed, thrashing, but Eli held on, grabbing the mane, turning the stallion's head away from the flames. Step by step, he led him backward. Out of the corral, out of danger, into the open yard. The horse trembled violently, but calmed under Eli's touch. The ranch hands smothered the flames. Maeve watched from the barn entrance, her breath shaky, heart pounding. Eli brought the stallion into the dry barn, rubbing him down with a sack. His hands shook from cold. Blood dripped from a cut on his foot. Maeve stepped inside. "You're a fool," she whispered, voice cracking. "A complete fool." "He was scared," Eli said quietly. "Nothing should die scared if someone can help it." Her throat tightened. Those words hit too close. Fire, fear, loneliness, all the demons she carried. And she saw something else. The man was shivering. "You're hurt," she said, stepping closer. "Sit." He tried to protest, but she pointed sharply at a bale of hay. He obeyed. She fetched warm water and bandages. Kneeling in the straw, she washed his bleeding feet with gentle, trembling hands. It felt like something breaking open between them. Soft, slow, dangerous. When her fingers touched the scars on his hands, something rose in both of them, something neither had felt in years. She reached up, brushed a line on his cheek gently. Their faces drew close. But then, as the warmth rose between them, Maeve pulled back sharply, panic flashing across her expression. "No," she whispered, stepping away. "No." She fled the barn, leaving Eli alone with the dim lantern light, his heart pounding, the storm still raging outside. Everything between them had changed, and neither of them knew what would happen next. The storm passed, but nothing on the Carson ranch felt calm. The sky cleared, the mud began to dry, and the wind softened, yet something heavier than weather hung over the land. It clung to the house, the barn, the yard. It followed Eli Wade every place he walked. And it followed Maeve Carson, too. She kept her distance the morning after the fire. She gave orders through her foreman. She ate alone in the house. She did not ride out across the fields like she always did. She stayed inside with her shutters closed, trying to trap her thoughts away from the man who had stepped into fire for her horse. But thoughts like those were not easily locked away. Eli felt the weight of it too. He worked harder than ever, trying to fill his head with fence work, cattle checks, cleaning tack, anything that kept him from remembering the warmth of her hands on his skin, the softness in her eyes when she looked at him in the barn. He kept telling himself, she was a widow, she was hurting, she was trying to stay strong. She did not need a man with scars and a past he couldn't wash off. But no matter how many times he said it, his heart refused to listen. Late one afternoon, while checking the south pasture, Eli spotted something unusual. Fresh tracks. Wagon wheels. Not ranch tracks. Not any hand he knew. He followed them toward the ridge until he saw a small wagon in the distance. A lone man stood beside it, scanning the ranch house with narrow eyes. Eli approached slow, one hand near his belt. "Help you with something?" The man turned. He was big, thick-shouldered with a long coat and a cruel grin. "I'm looking for Maeve Carson," he said. "Tell her Caleb Ford is here." Eli felt a strange tightening in his gut. "Who are you to her?" "Her late husband's cousin," Caleb said. "I came for what's owed to me." Eli didn't like the sound of that. Not one bit. He nodded toward the ranch house. "She's inside, but you can't just walk in." Caleb snorted. Boy, I go where I please. He pushed past. Eli followed. Inside the main house, Maeve stood at the dining table sorting papers. When Caleb entered, she froze. Her face turned pale. Her hands went stiff. "You," she whispered. The way she said the word made Eli's stomach twist. Caleb smirked. "Good to see you too, cousin's wife. Shame you didn't come to the funeral." "You know why," she said quietly. "Oh, I do." Caleb walked closer. "Lewis left more debts than cattle. Signed over half this ranch to me in exchange for loans. Now I've come to collect." "That loan wasn't real," Maeve said, voice tight. "You forged his signature. Everyone knew it." Caleb shrugged. "The judge in Cheyenne won't care. Paper's all that matters. I plan to take the ranch by winter." Eli stepped forward. "You should leave." Caleb turned slowly, looking Eli up and down. "And who are you? The widow's new pet?" Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't speak. Caleb chuckled. "Thought so." He walked toward the door, pausing only to throw one last threat over his shoulder. "I'll be back in 2 days. Have the deed ready. Or I'll take the land by force." He left. The house fell silent. Maeve's hands started to shake. She held the table edge, trying to steady herself. "He means it. Caleb is dangerous. Lewis borrowed money from him, lost it, lied about it. I tried to fix it, but it was too late." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Eli asked softly. "Because this ranch is all I have left," she whispered. "I have fought for it alone. I thought I could keep fighting." She looked at him, her voice breaking. "But now he'll take everything." Eli stepped closer, slow and steady. "Not while I'm here." Her eyes filled, not with tears of weakness, but with something deeper. Something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Trust. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know what to do anymore." Eli knelt in front of her. He didn't touch her. He just stayed with her, letting her breathe. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. Maeve looked up slowly. Her eyes were full of hurt and fear, but also a fragile hope. "You would help me?" she whispered. "Yes," Eli said, "but not because of the ranch." Their eyes held each other in a long, quiet moment. Nothing loud, nothing rushed. Just truth rising in the space between them. That night, the ranch hands gathered at the bunkhouse, ready to fight if Caleb returned. Eli made a plan to stand at the gate, to face Caleb first, to protect Maeve and the ranch from a man who had already taken too much from her life. But Maeve had a different plan. She knocked on the bunkhouse door after dark. Eli stepped outside. She stood in the lantern light, not hard and distant like before. Her face was soft, her voice gentle. "I don't want to face this storm without you," she said. Eli swallowed. "You won't." She took one step closer, then another. "You walked into fire for my horse," she whispered. "You've worked every day without asking anything. You've seen my worst moments, and you stayed." Her voice shook as she lifted her hand to his chest. "No man has ever done that for me." Eli looked at her, searching her eyes. "Maeve," he said quietly, "are you sure?" Quote. She nodded. "Yes." The wind stilled. The ranch fell quiet. And for the first time in years, Maeve Carson let someone close. She let herself feel safe, wanted, held. Eli drew her into his arms, gentle and firm, and the two stood together in the dark yard as the cold night wrapped around them. It didn't matter what Caleb would try in 2 days. It didn't matter what storms still waited on the horizon. For the first time since losing everything, both of them felt the same thing. They were no longer alone.